Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Doug Hall. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I am excited to learn from you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, my name's Doug Hall, obviously, and I've been doing this forever, for a long time. And I've been doing innovation for almost 50 years now. And I started at Procter Gamble in the marketing department there, did 10 years there, and then created the Eureka Ranch, where we help people basically find, filter, and fast track big ideas. I mean, we're the big idea people. And a few years ago, for reasons that are hard to understand, I created a distillery, and it kind of took off. And so that created a lot of excitement. But from that, I learned that success in business is not just about creating new products or services, but also making them happen. And to do that, you got to have the employees. And that led to a bunch of work creating the proactive problem solving, which is the new book and the new training that we're doing.
And I love reading it. And it got me at the beginning because it said stop the stupid. And that's a conversation I have every day. And it's not about the way people are. It's more about you're doing things that don't make sense, right? The systems and the processes or what you're asking just aren't correct. So I'd love for you to put that in your words.
So what happened is people are turned out, burnt up. I mean, it's tough in today's world. And especially as a small and mid-sized business, I mean, it's hard to compete. It's hard for everybody. When we put the program together, the idea was to create a culture of never-ending improvement, basically, which also means never-ending increasing profitability, never-ending increasing sales to make that happen. And you can't do it by yourself. I mean, I've had my business forever. And to do it, you got to have everybody engaged. And the problem is you get a bunch of employees together or team members and you start to talk to them and their eyes roll in the back of the head and they sit back and they go, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, this is the latest thing. The boss read a book. Now we got to do this. They went to their YPO and they heard a speaker and blah, 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 blah. And here we go again, right? And it's going to come and go. And this one, I could feel it in my soul because I'd seen it with distillery workers who are putting bottles on lines and not flashy work. And I'd seen them become part of the process and helped us grow and grow and grow the business. And so I needed a way to do it. And I just blurted out, okay, I know you're sitting there and you're, skeptical about all of this stuff. Like, what the hell do you know, you old man sitting here talking to me? How about if we do this? I'm going to teach you how to think, how to be a proactive problem solver of broken systems. But the first thing you're going to do with them is not something grandiose for the company. We're going to stop the stupid stuff that gets in the way of you doing your work. Does anybody have anything stupid that they have to deal with every day? Is it communications issues, poor standard operating procedures, poor tools, poor training? What do you have anything? And they were like, yeah. And suddenly I realized that if you're going to get your team to really make a 180, a real transformation, be fully in it with you, you got to start off by giving them a benefit. And if you can help them, then they'll buy in. And one of the classic examples I tell is there's a lady, she came up and I said, do you have anything stupid? She says, yeah, my back hurts. I said, your back hurts? Yeah, I work and I assemble these machines for this company. But at the end, I have to lift them up with another lady and put them in a box. And at the end of the day, my back hurts. I said, how long's this been? She said, about 10 years. I said, that's a long time for your back hurting. So I got her team leader was in the training. We just did a 1-day training. And I said, well, what can we do about her back? He thought for a minute. He said, well, in another part of the company, it's a good sized company, they have a different type of box. In our area, we get the boxes, we assemble them, and then we put the unit in the box. This other part of the company, they roll the unit on top of the cardboard, and then they build the box around the unit. They don't have to lift. Bing, problem gone. No back hurts. The best part is you can imagine what an advocate she's become for the proactive problem solving stuff we're talking about. Because if you can help them do their work, because see, I deeply believe that nobody goes to work and says, I want to do dumb stuff. They want to contribute. They want to do something meaningful. But there's stuff that gets in their way, and they're not important enough for the CEO to get involved. But them and their team leader, most of them are in their sphere of influence, and they can just fix them. And so by stopping the stupid as the first place, you get engagement. Now, and engagement levels right now are about 35% of employees. So if we can do that, then they can help us do the bigger things we need to do to grow our sales and profits and all the rest. And so it's kind of become a mantra. And I knew we had it when I had a huge company and we had their logistics people. I mean, the people that schedule the trucks, okay, to ship things. And, not highfalutin folks, ordinary people. And I said, stop the stupid. And they got engaged. And they have this net promoter score. You might have heard of it. And it goes from minus 100 to 100. And the program, they gave it a 74. Now, nobody likes training, but them to give it a 74 was like a miracle had occurred. And that's when I realized we were onto something. That what we've got to do is we've got to get them engaged in helping us fix the broken systems that are getting in the way of our work. In fact, the research is pretty terrible on this. It says that what we found is that the average manager wastes 3.5 hours a day dealing with employee mistakes and broken systems, of which overwhelming majority of it is broken systems, not employee mistakes. So that's it. Fix the system, stupid.
Okay. A, I'm surprised she put up with it for 10 years. That's another story.
Yeah.
B, there's no line on the P&L that says stupid, right? Because if there was, it would make we're spending too much on stupid. We need to fix that, right? But I can tell by looking at the net profit line, there's stupid in here. I can't see it, but I know it's there because of what I'm seeing, hearing, and looking at other measurements. And so that's the problem, I think, for a lot. But you also said you got to fix the systems. And for a lot of small businesses, they don't necessarily have systems to begin with, which means everybody who does a job does it their way, which means there's a whole lot of...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They actually, it's not random. There isn't randomness. There are systems. The problem is if you, as the organization, don't design those systems for effectiveness, efficiency, safety, and all of the things, profitability, systems will be created because workers will find a way. They may not optimize it for your needs. They may make it so they don't have to work as hard. But there will be a system, written or not written, informal, tribal conversations. There will be some way that they do it. And when we get the employees becoming part of that solution, a miracle occurs. In fact, there was the most famous guy on systems was a guy named Dr. W. Edwards Deming. He's the guy that went to Japan after World War II. Japan had a negative net worth, and he was responsible for growing the quality transformation in the early 80s of Japan for Toyota and Sony and all the rest of them. And led on to Lean and Six Sigma and all of this kind of stuff. And Dr. Deming famously said that 94% of the problem is the system, 6% is the work. And my dad happened to work with him when he first came back to the U.S. And as a young engineer, my dad pounded into my head, it's the system, fix the system. And so whether it's system-driven innovation, whether it's systems for enabling employees, systems make it reliable, reproducible, and profitable. It also ends the firefighting. We have some people that their careers are about firefighting. They love chaos.
Well, they create the fires, don't they?
I want to vaporize it so that we can do the real work and not waste our time on junk. I mean, just before you came on, I had a call was coming from my partner. He said, oh my God, I can't believe this. He said, somebody was fishing and somehow found our bookkeeper and sent her an invoice for $42,000 and said that Doug had approved this. And he looked at it, he said, this doesn't seem right. And he called me and said, did you give an invoice today for $42,000? No, not at all. I've been doing these all day. No, not at all. And he's like, oh my God. He says, it's a good thing we've got a system with checks and balances to find it because the bookkeeper was just sending it through.
I get 5 of those a day, and I always wondered why. Now I know. Because somebody somewhere is paying them.
Right. That's right.
Oh, there's a new business plan. Just send out invoices.
No.
I'm kidding.
But Rocky, the biggest thing about this, they asked Dr. Deming, literally the prize for quality in Japan is named the Deming Prize after an American statistician, which is bizarre. But they asked him once, they said, what do you want to be known for? And he said, systems and quality. And then he said, no, that's not it. What I'm about And I'm adopting this too, because as you get older, you kind of can see these things better. What I'm about is bringing back joy in work.
Mm.
You know, if your people are engaged, if they're contributing, if they're helping you find ways to work smarter, you know, that lady, by the way, went on, her team could assemble 4 machines. She and another lady could assemble 4 machines a day. Today, they can assemble 40 machines a day. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, I get it.
When they get engaged, it's not 5 or 10%. It's a step change that happens because you can't all do it by yourself. You got to have them thinking. You got to have them thinking.
Out of curiosity, have you ever rewarded employees for doing stuff like that?
I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't, because that's a bribe for
It,
doing their
it,
job. And it creates extrinsic motivation instead of intrinsic motivation. And you get a short-term boost, and long-term, it just ends up with people that are angry and frustrated. And the key is, now team rewards for the whole team doing stuff, that's different.
okay.
But bribing people to do their work is not
I
this.
don't mean bribing people to do their work. I mean, if you bring me an idea that gets us to go from 4 to 40, you know, to me, that's like, hey, let's reward you for putting that effort in. But maybe you're right, because I know intrinsic, extrinsic creates that tug of war. And when you start doing extrinsic, people stop responding over time.
If you've only got one person doing that, I can see that. But what we're seeing is once we start with a team and start to get all the others doing it, everybody's doing it all the time. It's
Okay.
what we do here. That's
Okay.
part of my
So it's the
job, is
culture.
to use that 49-ounce sponge atop my shoulders and come up with ideas.
I very much appreciate that, and I get it. And it's one of the struggles. I think too often, especially in the small business, they think they have to have the answers. They don't always trust their people, nor do they listen to people. That's probably a youth thing now, because I was the same way when I was young. But your people who are on the front line know this stuff better than anybody.
They do. I mean, so we had a new bottling line came into the distillery. We were doubling every 3 to 6 months. Okay. So it's crazy. So we needed this new line for Christmas to get the volume, to get the bourbon out to people. And we had engineers working on it. We had a partner that was helping pay for the machine. And we had engineers from Italy and from Scotland helping us. 9 months went by, it's not working. And I tell the story in Proactive Problem Solving. I took this young guy, Kanan, who'd been the guy who's the team leader running the machine. And the machine would break down, I don't know, 25 times an hour. You know, and when it broke down, he had to climb up in it, put his fingers down in, like if it's the capsules, the shrinks, pull them out, climb back down, start it up again. Then it broke down again. He had to go on and get the corks unjammed. Well, this goes on for 9 months, and they're fed up. And finally I said, partners, I don't mean any disrespect, but I don't have a lot of confidence that you're going to get this fixed. So let's try it my way for a month. And I said, Kanan, you're now in charge. He said, I'm not an engineer. I said, the engineers ain't doing so good either. I said, you know this machine, and I know you're a smart guy. I'm going to coach you, and I'm going to follow the proactive problem-solving process. I'm going to take you through this. And he'd gone through the training, so he knew it. I said, we're going to take this step by step. And sure enough, within a month, the machine's running perfectly. This kid that had long hair, tattoos, played music in a band that I can't understand is like a freaking genius. And by the way, that guy right now, today, as we're recording this, is down in Lexington, Kentucky, calling on liquor stores because he's also become a phenomenal salesperson. So when we have, around production, because it starts and stops, you get barrels and you have to do the distilling and all the different stuff. And so whenever we have time, we send him out on the road because he is like a zealot selling this stuff and does a magnificent job of selling it. And all of our employees are like that. They're engaged. They're engaged in part of the process.
Do you hire for that type of engagement? Is a culture fit? Like, do you test or try and figure out if they'll fit that? Or is that something you build later, like when they come on board?
Well, everybody, not just me, but everybody, you try to hire people that are not like a rock. You want somebody that's alive.
No, I understand.
That thinks and does things, but they don't know. How could they know how to innovate? How could they know how to problem solve? We teach them how to do that. We call it the Brain Brew way. The distillery is called Brain Brew. And I called it Brain Brew, so they said, why is it called Brain Brew? I said, because we're going to be smarter. We're competing against 4 multinationals that control 90% of the market. If we play by their rules, we lose. So it's called Brain Brew because we do things smarter than anybody else. And I said, do you want to be part? Now, when you explain that to people, If they get excited, I know they're going to be a good employee.
So there's a test, right? You're checking to see how they respond.
Do they have a pulse, and do they want to do cool things that matter?
And you're asking questions to find that out. And I get that.
Even that doesn't do it. Most people hire people like that, and then what happens to them? They get frustrated with them. And I go in and I ask an owner, I said, do you believe in your people? Well, we got some people that are okay. Okay, well, let's just fire them. Bring some new ones in. And here, I'll predict what will happen. You got broken systems. You got fights between this manager and that manager. You got all this crap going on. And so we're going to get rid of them. We're going to put new people into the broken system. You know what? They'll be just as bad as the last batch. That's reality. People want to do great things. We need to teach them how to do it.
And a lot of business owners are, I don't have time. I'll just do it.
You're wasting 3.5 hours a day dealing with broken mistakes and broken systems. So how long do you want to keep wasting that 3.5 hours a day?
I don't disagree with you. I'm just trying to drive a point home.
I know, but I'm like, we can do this, people. And small businesses are awesome because you have so many benefits that the corporations with all the bureaucracy don't have. That you don't have that junk that they've done. You can do miraculous things, but you gotta learn how to create a culture of proactive problem solvers.
And I agree with that. One of the things you do is you teach people to take immediate action. So how do you kind of put that within constraints so that they don't blow stuff up, so to speak?
Well, I mean, there's 3 parts to it, just to give a framing, just so that we know where we are, because you're jumping at something that's very, very important. One is you got to be able to identify the problem, figure out the solution, and then drive out risk and implementation. And there, what we use is called the Deming cycle. It's called plan, do, study, act. We also call it fail fast, fail cheap. And the idea is you say, hey, here's the problem. I think I got an idea that could fix it. And we say, what's the smallest test we could run to see if that's going to work? And then what do we learn from it? Did it work? Why did it work? Did it not work? Why didn't it work? And then what else can we do? And then you usually go around. It usually takes 4 or 5 rounds before you get the thing solved. It's a disciplined, methodical process. And so that gives you some real clarity, and your team leaders or managers working with you on it and coaching you on it. But that's how you can give it some boundaries to make this work. It's not letting the inmates run the asylum. It's not sending them out to do it.
No, and I totally agree with that. You made this comment before, but we didn't really dig into it. 94% of the problem is the system, 6% the employee. And yet I would bet everyone's blaming the employee because they didn't build the good systems. What I see people struggle with is building the system. And that's probably why the systems in many cases aren't that great. So who's got to build the system?
Well, I like the process that I find effective and that we teach is to get the people that are involved in the system. There's a 4-step process. Step 1 is to make the system visible, which is in very simple terms, draw out what the system is. Not 17 boxes, 4 boxes. What are the inputs? What happens and how does it work? Now, the challenge is when you try to sit down to do this, it can get very frustrating. About an hour or so before we got together here, I've got a company that's got a sales and marketing system that is gone from them having, they're about a $50 million company. They had about $2 or $3 million in sales leads, real quality sales leads in the pipeline. They now have 50 million. Huge. 9 months it took. 9 months it took. And I'd worked on it in the beginning, and if there's some points, I'd help them. And I said, okay, guys, we've scaled this up now because they're scaling it up bigger and bigger. I said, let's document the system. And I sat with the team and we put it down. And then I came back to them. I said, guys, I'm looking at this thing and it's just not making sense to me. Oh, yeah, there's another thing we do we forgot to tell you. And then somebody else, oh, yeah, there's another thing I do. You probably don't know this. I'm like, guys, we're supposed to have this documented. And we're going through this. And I just got on a phone call and I learned some more. I said, I think we've got it. But it's like they're doing the stuff because they're trying to get the work done, but people don't know what other people are doing. And so now with that system in place, and they're aware because they've all gone through training and are doing it, and the managers have gone through. We have separate training for managers because how to manage a proactive employee is different than normal. And so now we've got the system in place. So tomorrow morning at 9:00, I'm sitting down with them and we're going to go through and say, okay, now we've got a system map. We know what the system is. And it's just one piece of paper. And it's very simple. It is amazingly simple, but it's clear so that anybody can understand it when you walk through it. I said, tomorrow morning, we're now going to take the next generation. And so the second step is we're going to look for variation. Where is there variation in how we're doing things, how things are done? Because everything has variation in it. And those places that have high variation, we're going to mark as a variation area, as an area to run experiments to drive the variation up. Then number 3, we're going to look for psychology, positive and negative psychology, intrinsic versus extrinsic. How are we going to work on that? And we're going to mark those. This is a problem with negative psychology. There's a negative feedback loop or there's a problem with this. And then we're going to run the PDSA cycles to improve the system. And people say, when will we be done? Never. What part of never-ending continuous improvement do you not understand? This is a way of working. You can't bring in an expert to do this. I am against experts coming in to fix your systems because then the expert owns the system. The people running it need to own it so that they can fix it because it can always be made better. Always be made better.
And I agree with you. We use a ton of systems in our business, and I make the beginning of the year a time where we make massive system changes. It's like, we keep notes all the time, and then it's like, hey, because we have to turn everything over at the beginning of the year, like we're going to start incorporating all these new things into everything because we have to do other steps anyway. So it makes a perfect time. And so every year we take a step up automatically so that we provide better value.
What percentage of those would you say are reactive changes because of a problem? And how many of them are proactive where it's a good system, but you're making it a great system?
Usually it's proactive. Like we've noticed there's friction at points. And so it's how do I remove time or effort from the system is basically what it does. So how do we optimize it? When we find a problem, when I find problems, we try to automatically almost immediately push it through immediately. So problem occurs with one client, didn't see that coming. We're going to make a solution for this client. And now I'm going to take that solution. I'm going to apply it to everybody.
Okay. So one little thing when you're doing that, I mean, you've got a high awareness, so you probably understand it. But there are 2 types of problems. There are common cause problems and special cause problems. Common cause problems are problems built into the system the way we do it. Okay. The worker can't do anything about it. They're just built into the system. I had a company who they were getting these tanks, and when they would test them, they were failing. But the vendor was saying they were good. They were saying they were bad, and they were fighting with each other. I said, are we using the same gauges and the same process to measure the tanks? No. I said, okay, why don't you guys take your gauges and go to the vendor and measure the tanks there and see how they're measuring them. Well, sure enough, this is very embarrassing. The tanks were all fine. They had a faulty gauge and a faulty system for checking them to do it.
The vendor did.
No, the company did.
The company did.
They were rejecting perfectly good tanks, because they're doing it. That's a systemic problem. That's built in. That's going to keep happening forever until we fix it. Okay?
Yeah.
The other type is special cause, where the worker made a mistake. They fell asleep. They didn't follow the SOP, the standard operating procedure. They didn't do it. Well, that's a very small amount of those are that.
Yeah.
And the problem is if you have a special cause, say you've got a client that has a problem with a certain thing, and you put in a system, you're now creating needless. That's how our bureaucracy is built.
Oh, no. Our systems are automated. So once you build it, it goes. You don't.
Oh, digital. The world of digital.
Yes,
but you see what I'm saying, though?
Yes.
In human systems, you can easily create needless bureaucracy if it's a special cause one-off event.
Well, that leads to the question and the power of a simple little 3-letter word. Why? Why are we doing this, right?
Yeah.
What's the purpose behind it? And figuring out those root cause issues and dealing with it.
Yeah, I write in Proactive Problem Solving about something called Homeward Trail, which you're absolutely right, Rocky, because it is one of the things that I find is there'll be a legacy system that exists and nobody knows why. And I'm like, well, let's just change it. I said, is there somebody we can call? And inevitably they'll say, yeah, my dad built this. He's in Florida now because he started the company. I said, well, let's call him and ask him why. And more times than not, there was a reason the system was built that's a nuance that when you know it, then you can truly make an improvement. But if you don't know it, you're going to create a problem and you don't even realize you're doing it. So Homeward Trail is about getting back to the roots. Why is the system built this way? Why does it work this way? What are the key dimensions in it? So that we're making a smart improvement, not just starting off a cycle of chaos.
No, and I get that. I just read Elon Musk's book. And one of the things I've noticed is Elon really gets a lot of what you're talking about. You know, his engineers are seated next to the factory line so that, because if you built this, you better show us that it works. And I want you in front of your mistakes so you can fix it immediately.
Sure.
But the other thing he's like, and I think that's why he's driving everyone crazy in the government. He's like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Tell me who came up what you're talking about with these specifications. I want to know their name and I want to know why they did it. Because if you can't tell me why we're doing it, he's a little reckless. He's like, we're not going to, we'll go to the edges.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's absolutely right. But the speed with which he's doing it, he's not taking the time to figure it out right now.
No, he's not. But you know what? His philosophy is we're going to break everything and then we'll bring back the 10% we broke.
Easy
And
to do with digital,
yeah, easy to do.
hard to
Well,
do with humans.
yeah. And he blows up a couple rockets trying it out, you know? As long as you've got the money, so be it. That's a risk tolerance thing, right? We all have our own way, but the concept, I think, still hold true throughout all of that.
Yeah, we have to be a little careful. There's a lot of stuff that's been done on things, on sprints and stuff like that, on software. And when it's zeros and ones in code, there's a little consequence if you get it wrong. But when you're shooting steel, or you're organizing hospitality and you're organizing workers on how to do things, and there's the human systems. And that's what proactive problem solving is about. It's the human systems. Those are the places where all the waste and the issues are. Can we find ways to work smarter? And that takes enrollment and engagement and willing workers and leadership to do that. But the benefit that you receive when those workers are doing it is amazing.
It is. And that means that leadership has to be trainers, and they don't always realize that.
Yeah, that's why so what we'll do is a company will come by and they'll say, hey, you want to do this? I say, okay, tell you what. And I've done this with all my books because to do this, to create, if you want to create a culture of this, and let me just make it really blunt to business owners, because I've owned a business since I was 12. Okay. This is when I started my first business. Do you want to go on vacation? Do you want to have the company grow while you're gone? Do you want it to be better than when you come back? Or do you want to worry about it all the time? I mean, some of you, it's a hobby. You like to do it. I like to go to the beach and not keep on the damn phone, okay? And really, with a wife I've been with for 49 years, she likes it too. And so you've got to get the systems in place to get them engaged. But in order to do this for a culture, you have to do bottom up, top down, and the middle out. You've got to get the middle managers, have training for them, and you got to have the leadership. And I spend most all of my time working with the leadership. And it's not that they're dumb. It's just, how could they know? How could they know? How could they know there was any other way to lead than the way they're doing it? You know, they don't. But when we show them how they can enable and empower and give them systems for how to do it, a miracle occurs.
Half of my phone calls are, we need to have systems in place. We need to work on your systems. We need to build systems, because that's what it comes down to. The other thing that you say that I absolutely love is do the math.
Yeah, I love it. I love the math. I mean, the math is one of those, I've been inventing for so long, so many different things for so many different companies, from Nike to Disney to America. I mean, you name it, over 2,000 companies. And we don't want to confront reality. We want to live in our dream world. And I've been successful because I'm pretty clear about confronting the reality. And one of the best ways to do that is to do the math. Now people say, well, I can't do the math. How do I do the math? It hasn't occurred yet. I don't know. And by the way, math after you do it is worthless. It's too late. I'm talking about math forward. And so we teach a system called Fermi estimating, named after Enrico Fermi, where you make an estimate. What's your best guess? What's the one that there's only a 1 in 5 chance that it's less than this and a 1 in 5 chance that it's higher than this? And so now you're modeling best case, worst case, best case. Mm-hmm. And you can sit down with somebody with simple math and do out the things to see the scope of what you're doing. And if that variance is too big from the best to the worst, if it's too large, then we start running problem solving, proactive problem solving to reduce the variance. How can we run an experiment? How much will people buy? Let's run an experiment. See how much they're going to buy each time they buy. How many times they'll buy? Let's try a trial and see how much they're going to do. Let's learn these things. We can quantify this stuff.
We can. It's amazing what happens. I can sit down and do an entire math equation for the entire business, starting with lead flow and ending with cash leaving the business and into the owner's pocket. All of that can be mathed out in one complete equation when we know all these variables. We do our best, and over time, we can adjust them. And then we also see which variable, if we play with, gets us the biggest impact. Not on top line revenue, but on cash coming to the owner, the rewards.
Absolutely. I mean, you are talking, you have to do that. And I swear, when I started the distillery, I did it with this guy named Joe Gergash, who's a lot younger than me. But I saw something in him. He was a systems guy, and he was working at a pizza place that I'd helped, and it was all about systems. And then I asked him, I said, so what's the cost of your food cost on this? And he could do it for me. And I said, dude, you want to make some whiskey for a while? I got a job for you. And because he had two things. In a restaurant business, if you don't have systems at 7 o'clock on Friday night, you're dead. And then if you don't do the math, you're not going to make any money. And so between the math and systems, I said, you're a guy I want to be a partner with. And let me just, Rocky, tell you an example of that in action and saving money. We were at a trade show, and volume was doubling and doubling, and we had constraints, and we're looking for fixing things. And one of the constraints was the collection table at the end. In other words, the machines going through, and at the end, people had taken the bottles off and putting them in boxes. And the problem is if they get slowed, it stops up the line and it creates a barrier. A collection table allows there to be an overflow, a buffer. Collection tables are usually custom built. There's the kinds of issues. And at the show, Joe had seen a collection table that was it was near the end of the year, and it was the end of the model year, and they were putting a new one that was going to be better the next year. And the guy said, I don't want to take it home with me. Make me an offer on it. Okay. And Joe said, I think I want to buy it. I said, well, let's do the math. And so we went over and we're at the trade show. We found a little spot with a table. I said, okay, so what's the system now? What'll the system do? How much will it make? What do we think what's the machine go for? Okay, what price are we going to pay? How long will it take this to pay out? Just simple math using our calculators, our phones, and, pencil and paper. And we figured out we could pay the thing out in about 6 weeks. I said, buy it.
That's easy math.
But how long could you have screwed around with trying to make a decision on something like that?
Forever, yeah.
So math is our friend. It really is.
It is.
It's not right. It will be wrong, but it'll be useful to give you a first estimate and then continue to make the estimates better. We've got this fixation that we got to get it right. You can't get it right. Make your best guess and then continue to learn more and make it better and better.
And I agree with you. The other thing I like to do, and you talked about it, but I'm just reminding people, I put pressure tests into the math because I find most entrepreneurs are very optimistic, and me as their money guy tends to be a little bit more pessimistic. And if my pessimistic numbers math well, it's a full-blown go because it shows me we can screw up and still do okay.
I think Richard Branson said that's called protecting the downside.
Yeah. It's all about protecting the downside.
The other entrepreneurial way to talk about it is, what's your plan B, or what's your back door? If it doesn't work, then what? What are we going to do?
Right. And you can plan for that. And that's just what we do. Recession planning, this planning. How do we plan for China tariffs? There's a million things that are going on. And you can look at opportunities. I think too often people look the wrong way. And if you can switch your look 180 degrees, there's opportunities all around you. I find most entrepreneurs have diamonds at their feet and they just can't see them. And, that's what we help them do.
Yeah, absolutely. If
people would like to learn more about your training, your book, how do they find you?
DougHall.com. DOUGHALL. And also, just so that folks know, I spend probably 90% of my time working with leadership, and I enjoy teaching them and doing that. And some of them have become long-term friends, and I just really love to help them and to be part of it. But my passion is working with the people in the front. And so I figured out a system to enable me to do the frontline stuff. Because normally I'm working with the senior people, and my team is helping teach them and teach their people how to teach others. So we don't go in and teach everybody. We teach a few key people, teach them how to teach others so that they can expand it themselves. And sometimes companies will come together, 2 or 3 companies, to do it together and do it. But so one of the things I do is when a book comes out, and if we've got a program with it like this, I make an offer to do it for a fraction of the cost if they book it during the year the book comes out, which is in 2025. And so if you do it now, I'll come and do it myself personally. And it's my selfish way to get to work with the frontline people, because I can do that, because the team, they want to work the clients that are engaged. I go, I'll just do the demos with them. I'll do some demos with them. It's my way to get with the everyday folks and to just help them, because the joy in work that they realize and the potential that they can see. I mean, I'm well into Medicare age, okay? Can't even say I'm young anymore when you're in Medicare. And I thought I'd be sailing and retired now. And I am working harder than I ever had. Now, my wife, 49 years, she is happy about this, because she says, if you stop working, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, because you're going to keep changing everything in the house. But so we have good fun together. But I would love to help. And if you just go to DougHall.com, you can get it. Also,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.